Weekend, we had some more news on the pharma industry. With an aim to break the doctor-patient nexus, the Medical Council of India has issued guidelines for doctors to prescribe generic drugs. To understand how exactly this will impact the pharma companies as well as pharmacies and consumers, we are now joined by Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, the CMD of Biocon, Mr. S. Srinivasan of the All India Drug Action Network, and we have Vikas Dandekar with us in the studio to ask a couple of questions as well. Afternoon, everybody. Mrs. Shaw, I'm going to come to you first. You've been a veteran of the industry. You head a pharmaceutical company. What are your thoughts in terms of generic prescriptions by doctors now?
You know, the intent is understandable and laudable, but I think implementation is going to be very challenging because we are not ready yet. Let me explain why. Because I think our regulatory framework does not provide egalitarian opportunities for all the pharmaceutical companies. I'll tell you why, because I think the quality systems, the infrastructure, and the requirements to basically make sure that every generic drug is of the same quality and has passed the same quality system is not there yet in India.
Right. So, ma'am, what do you think will be the fallout, Vikas, this side? Where do you think we are headed? Because there is some kind of a vagueness also. You know, some of the experts we spoke to said that there is a provision that, you know, we can write branded drug as well as the name of the generic. Do you think this is really heading in the right direction, or what needs to be done for this?
See, Vikas, I personally feel that when we want to basically implement these kind of objectives, then I think there needs to be a much more thoughtful process of arriving at this point. Unfortunately, we do things in a hurry. And I think we rush through things without looking at the more complex aspects of implementing these things, which will actually have a very negative impact on what you're trying to do. So I personally believe that, you know, by going on changing your objectives by saying, okay, we will also allow branded names to be written, this is all, I think, reflects the kind of hurriedness and the lack of total attention to detail. I think that's what is happening. Okay. I think this is possible, but I think what is your main objective? Your main objective is you're trying to break the doctor company the nexus, which is very important.
Okay. Mrs. Shaw, just taking that point forward, one of the key concerns is strict quality assessment, which is actually not a law in India for all generic drugs that exist in the market. So is that your biggest fear, that maybe a chemist can just, you know, provide a spurious drug or drug which is the cheapest, but does not have any sort of bioequivalent studies done or quality assessment done?
No, but that's what I meant, that, you know, basically there is not a level playing field for companies as yet. And we need a regulatory system, a regulatory framework, which actually ensures that every drug that is approved actually has the same level of safety, efficacy, and reliability, with which you can then say that, okay, the doctor must prescribe a generic drug and only the generic name, and that any drug in the pharmacy would be able to comply with the quality expectations of such a drug.
Morning, Prashant.
And we are not there yet.
Yes, ma'am, good morning. Prashant here. But why is that the case? One would imagine that the standard, every drug company producing a drug has to cross that same hurdle. The standard for everyone is the same. So
no,
can't
but
this...
the problem is
yes.
that you have a regulatory system that has a central regulatory authority, and then you have a state regulatory authority. If you had a central regulatory authority that basically controlled all approvals, you can actually achieve this. But the moment you introduce a state regulator who basically is free to decide what they want to approve at the state level, it is actually creating a lot of inequities and, anomalies in the quality systems.
It's still a regulator, right? Central or state. It's still the government which is approving, giving its stamp of approval.
Unfortunately, that's the problem in our country, that we don't have the same standards being implemented at the state levels. And because healthcare is a state subject, they unfortunately have also given regulations at the state level.
Mr. Srinivasan, you have reacted somewhat favorably to this suggestion of generic prescription. What are your initial thoughts, and how do you think this will pan out?
Well, like Mahatma Gandhi said about Western civilization, this is a good idea on paper, but I don't think it's implementable at the present point of time. Because you need a lot of prerequisites before this is implemented. Some of them Madam Shaw has already pointed out. And the basic thing is that I'm not even sure whether there is a law available at present which can allow the pharmacist to, if you go with the generic prescription,
Okay.
Anything else like that. So there is no such law at present, or the law is not clear. The Rule 65 of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. So that's number one. And the second thing is, I don't think doctors are convinced in their heart of their hearts that generics are as good as the branded versions. Even big companies make generic drugs.
Sure.
And
Mr. Srinivasan, that point is taken. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
This particular circular that came out from the Medical Council of India, is it applicable for all doctors from today onwards? All prescriptions will be in generic names today onwards?
That is a little, that's what they desire, but I don't think it's legal, because it is just part of the code of the conduct. The September 2016 amendment of the Medical Council of India, this is listed under the duties and responsibilities of doctors, and it doesn't have any teeth. It doesn't say that if I don't do this, if I don't prescribe by generic, what will happen to me? It does not say that. And it's not. There's no question of punishment in this. And if you're going to punish, how will you punish the so many, about 7 lakh doctors in this country? It is impractical. You'll set their teeth on the edge. So I think it has to be something much more practical. Okay. And the other thing is, as long as there are brand name drugs in this country, you cannot really implement this requirement. First of all, make all the drugs of good quality and then remove brands, as in many of the better regulated countries.
Okay, Mrs. Shaw, just wanted your thoughts, because there's a whole other aspect of this issue, which is basically what happens to market reps, basically medical reps who sell the drugs to doctors at this point in time. They're around 3,000 to 4,000 for any big pharma company. There's a fear that maybe there could be some amount of unemployment, and eventually there could be a hit in profits as well, which could affect R&D expenditure. Do you think that might be the case for Biocon?
Look, I think Biocon is not a very significant player in the Indian market in terms of size, because you can see that most companies that you're talking about, the well-established companies, are much larger than Biocon in terms of the Indian market, because Biocon is largely an export-oriented company. But having said that, I just want to also comment on what Mr. Srinivasan just said. I think you cannot accept a situation where a company has a differentiated quality system for a branded product and its generic version. I think that is totally unacceptable. It has to be the one and the same. So that is something which we need to look into, because it says it reflects very poorly on our quality system if that is the case. But having said that, I think we need to bring quality on par across the board. If you can do that, then certainly I think just prescribing the generic name and not allowing companies to have a branded version will work. And that is what happens, like Mr. Srinivasan said, in many countries. But what, of course, cannot be comparable is the fact that in most countries who have this approach also have large procurement, which is covered under a large national insurance kind of a scheme, which India doesn't have. And therefore, I think this one or the other may not work. And you will still need medical reps to basically promote a company's generic drug, saying that, Biocon wants to tell you about its generic version and blah, blah, blah. So maybe you may not see such a fall in the market reps in the market, because each company will nevertheless continue promoting the quality and reliability and the differentiator that it comes out with its own generic drug. But over time, yes, this will impact.
Quick last question, Mrs. Shaw, before we let you go. Is the industry reaching out to the government only because there could be, there's a lot of arbit regulation that we've seen. If it's not FDC, it's NLEM. If it's not NLEM, it's TENS under NLEM. And now it is this. So your sense in terms of whether there's this arbit regulation which is going to be brought up by the pharma industry?
Yes, I think first and foremost, we need to fix the whole regulatory governance structure. Without that, nothing is going to work. And I think government has to recognize that. As long as you have the present complex and sort of irrational governance structure for regulations and for drug regulation, you're going to find it very difficult, if not impossible, to implement such a policy. You cannot have a central drug regulator and a state-level drug regulator regulating differently.